you've heard it before, is about complacency. You understand what that is? Or anyways, I don't know what it is. Okay. Well, what happens is that, we made some predictions about 15 years ago of what would happen now. I'd say there were three major predictions we had made. One was that there would be a severe financial crisis, economic crisis, and the whole world's economic system would tumble. What has happened instead is that there was a financial crisis, and there is. And what they've done is to drag it out as long as possible, so we are in the process of this whole system falling apart. And believe me, it's falling apart. You may not get it in the news, but those of us who keep up with it, we can see that there are signs of some serious falling apart. The second thing we were talking about, the second crisis, is the crisis of war. In the beginning, we thought that there would be a big World War III, but instead of a World War III, we have 100+ small wars all around the world. So it's a different kind of world war that's going on, other than big boom. We have all these civil wars going on in all these countries in Africa, around in Asia, in South America, a lot in Africa, and even in Europe. And pretty soon you'll see the United States kind of blow up in civil war. So that's ongoing. And of course, the third, we call it crisis, is the continual earth changes. Again, we thought that would be one big abrupt thing, but no. What it is gradually getting worse and worse and worse and worse. For instance, we built this retreat center in 2009, 2010. And, a few things come by. We had a few storms, but just a couple weeks ago, we get hit by this typhoon. That is a sign that the earth changes are getting more and more pronounced as time goes by. So, what do we have here? We have, again, the end of a 25,000-year cycle. This big cycle coming to an end. And these are the three major crises that signal the end of the sixth cycle. The three are the financial, the whole economic system falling apart, the state of war worldwide, and the earth changes coming up. So those three are like it's a big signal to all of us, telling us it's coming, not coming, it's happening. So actually, we are in the middle of the closing of this cosmic cycle of 25,000 years. And I see around the world most people say, well, everything's going okay. Some people's going okay. Some people's going horrible. We travel to Greece and we travel to Italy and we travel around Europe and we see those countries are closing down. I thought we had landed in Italy on a Sunday, but it wasn't. It's just that all the shops had gone bankrupt and they were closed. That's why they were closed. And people are really suffering in different areas. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to come here. It means that one gets it, the other one doesn't, and then they get it, and then it keeps going like this until the whole world is engulfed in this particular economic crisis that's going on. And it is quite plain to me that every dollar or every peso that you have today, tomorrow buys less. And then next week it buys less. You can maybe you could have bought chewing gum with this today. I bet with one peso you can't buy anything. So you have to have 10 pesos, or maybe 20 to buy the same thing that you did. This is a sign that things are going downhill. And this is the way the government's kind of fool you into thinking that everything is okay, which is what I mean by complacency. Everybody has lost, most people have lost the idea that this is the end of the cycle. And remember, there is no stopping at the end of the cycle. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. It may take 2 years, it may take 3 years, it may take 5 years, but it's going to happen. That you can tell, you can be sure of that. So many people cannot see that, and therefore say, well, you know, what you're saying is false, and all this blah 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 is going on. And so everybody kind of settles into the state of well, it's not going to happen, it hasn't happened, although they don't see what's already happening. And then they think, oh well, you know, I'm just going to disregard it. And when they disregard it, they disregard the fact that this information is being given to you by a privilege to give you this information that's coming in place so that you can prepare if you want to survive the crisis, the 3 crises that are coming. Now, I was talking to a lady the other day in Thailand, and she says, I know Bangkok's going to be underwater, and all this is going to be flooded, and if we stay here, we will survive. And I asked her, well, what do you want to do with it? She said, well, I have decided I'm going to stay here and drown with the rest of the people. And I said, you know, that's perfectly valid. That's a valid choice. If you don't want to continue this way, you just go with the way. At least you don't have to deal with all the problems after the floods. You know, that's the more difficult thing. But if you are light bearers, do all of you know what light bearers are? Can you translate that for me?
Nagdadala ng iwan. Bearer. Ang bearer nagdadala. Light.
Carriers of light. Okay? And I think all of you are here, even if you don't know it. Now, your job is not to get into these crises coming in. Your job is to prepare and then to save yourself so that you can be on the other side of the crisis as a new cycle begins. Your job has not fully begun yet. You are now preparing for the destruction of this civilization and the renewal or the regeneration of a new civilization. That's your job. When you survive this part here, you go to the other side and then you start the rebuilding of the new civilization, the new era, the new age we've been talking about for years. And it's coming. And so my whole point in talking to you about this is don't let the complacency, repeat the word again. Don't let that take over, because I can guarantee you it's all happening right now. Even if you don't realize it, you have to open your eyes and see what's happening. It's not that it's coming, it's already here. All 3 crises are hitting the earth today, big time. And that is, again, the economic crisis, the state of worldwide war, and the earth changes. It's not only the earth changes that most people think about. It's all 3 of these are right happening now. And there's just no doubt in my mind that as this thing passes, and it may take, maybe by 2022, it'll be finished. But the economic crisis, for example, that's going to last 20, 30 years. The worst part is the first 5, 6 years. That we're here. But it's going to drag on and drag on. And of course, the earth changes are going to get more and more pronounced until, as we said, 60-meter high rise in the ocean. Cover most of the coastlines. All of the Philippines are going to shrink. cities and everything are going to be underwater. And then, of course, I don't know when the war has already begun here. I'm sure the Civil War, the rebels and all this. Every single country today has some kind of a rebel. Civil War going. This is the way it begins. This is the way the warfare starts. And then the Civil War builds up, and then you have intervention by the big powers, and then you have a war. But all this, of course, is to sell arms and sell tanks and all the things that the dark forces want to do to gain money. So, keep your eyes open. Don't lose the idea that this is a trend that's going to end a major cosmic cycle. And there's no way to stop it. It's going to continue. That's the way we get rid of the old and bring in the new. So that's just basically a simple message I was going to tell you this morning. Do you have any other questions?
Those who will live humanity will survive. And those who will not
They will perish. Yeah, I mean, they will be useless anyway. They're not going to help humanity. They want to continue their selfish ways, and they will just, they will either, because of their vibrations, they will just clean out. But the ones who will survive are the light bearers, and those who want to help them. And that's what you have to do. It's going to be a while before you get to that point. But it's rebuilding, the reconstruction of the civilization. And that's not very far away. I estimate personally that reconstruction is going to start around 2020, 2022. About that time, we will get the world teacher who will come in, and a new religion will be given to you. Although it's starting already to come in. Now, this has been going on for 400 years. It's not just started. We just are at the tail end of this 400-year process. That is actually at the tail end of a 25,000-year process. Everybody says, oh, don't worry about it. Ice is not going to melt for another 300 years. And this is not going to happen because it takes a lot. But, they forget that we are at the end. You could have said that 400 years ago, but now we can. But the whole point is, don't get involved in all this complacent kind of thinking that, oh, it's not going to happen. It didn't happen in 2012. It didn't happen in this. That's false thinking. And don't let the fear get to you, because the only way you get over the fear is to plan what you're going to do. Once you get the planning in, what you're supposed to do, the fear goes away. Because you know you have a reason for surviving the crisis that's before us. And of course, as I said, the reason is to survive this hump so that you can participate in the reconstruction of the society. And of course, all of the light bearers and the people who want to help humanity are the ones who are going to naturally survive. They will not be hurt by these crises. Somehow they'll be away from the dangers of all the, every time some danger comes, they'll be on the other side of the country or something like that. Because the spiritual hierarchy needs live light bearers, not dead ones. If you're 6 feet under, you're of no use to them. So that's why you can say, as long as you keep this in mind, you realize that everything is going, you will always be out of harm's way. This is part of the promise that they have given you tonight. So you don't have to worry about being hurt and stuff like that. As long as you're following your soul plan and the whole idea of helping humanity after the crisis.
We're going to give a money for us. the DF has managed to extend or keep the countdown. At this point in time, it seems like we are still in control. There is an apparent sense that they are still in control, manipulation is still going on. How long do you think they can manage to do that?
Well, they're not in control. It has become very obvious. These are the bankers and the financial people. They are really in trouble. And much of the system today is based on U.S. bonds, U.S. treasuries. Okay? Usually the United States sells these treasuries to people around the world, and the people hold on to these treasuries like it is gold. Now nobody wants them. Everybody's dumping them on the market. And to make it look like there's somebody to buy them, it's the United States that's buying them. They're buying back all this stuff to make it look like everything is going right, but it isn't. Usually, if you were to dump your treasury bonds, somebody else would buy it. You see, and another person would buy it, and they would keep it. But not now. Every time they dump the treasury bonds, the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States, comes in and grabs it and puts it aside so it's no longer on the market, and it doesn't seem like it's clogging up the market. And that has gotten to the point where the central bank has accumulated trillions of this stuff, and it's worth nothing. And that's what I mean by the real sickness of the financial system. And this is happening also in Europe and China. So everything looks rosy on the surface, but it's all rotting underneath.
So all of the news that China is now surpassing the productivity of the U.S. is not true?
It's not true, because now China is just like the U.S. was 10 years ago, feeding on debt. The government is making up money out of thin air and saving these companies that are going bankrupt. But you can't go very long with it. Just like the United States is telling it just doesn't work. So China is also in trouble. And that's what I mean by the painting of a rosy picture. Oh, everything will be okay in Asia. It won't. And once China, and I can see it already in other countries, in Thailand, and Indonesia, and here too. I'm sure you're feeling how each peso buys less and less every day. And before you know it, you have to have a wheelbarrow to buy a loaf of bread. And of course, in the United States and Europe, it's pretty bad. If you go along into Europe, you see, when I went to lecture in Greece, in Athens, the first year, there's a road leading to the hotel. The first year, the left side of the road was bankrupt. All the shops were closed. The second year I went, all the ones on the right side were bankrupt. So, they have a way of dealing with this crisis. What they do is the crisis, they say, goes from Monday to Friday. And from Saturday to Sunday, they go to the cafes and they enjoy themselves and pretend it's not there. Monday again, they start the crisis. Anyway, that's one person's way of dealing with it. But it's quite obvious, if you travel around, that things are winding down everywhere, even Australia. Do you have any other questions?
How about the earth changes? I said that the earth changes will come as the rising of the sea level the nuclear could come in 2007.
Well, that's what I was told, was that around 2017 is where you really feel the big jolts of the earth changes. Well, look at this already. 2014, you're already feeling it. But it's going to be bigger than that. And you all have to understand how the seas are going to rise, and the mechanics of it. It is not, you can't, if you sit there and wait for the ice in the Antarctica and the Arctic to melt so that the seas rise that high, you're going to wait another 100 years. But that's not what's happening. The thing is, the two poles, it's solid ice. The ice is about miles deep. And what's happening is that the warming is breaking off big chunks of this ice. And the ice is on the land. And so the ice moves slowly down toward the sea and it pops into the sea level. When it goes into the sea, that's when the sea level goes up. And there are several of these big, they're the biggest continents, ice-bound, or ice-free now. They are slowly inching their way to the ocean. And that's what the scientists are looking at. How long are these things going to take to fall into the ocean? Because that's when the whole seas of the earth, the ocean, goes up. And we estimated it will be 60 meters. When all the ones that fall 200 feet. Which means, as I said, most of the coastlines of the islands in the Philippines and around the world will be displaced. So, with this in mind, as I said, get rid of this idea of complacency and keep vigilant about what's happening. The next step you should do is to plan in your mind what you're going to do. If you don't have a plan in your mind what you're going to do when this happens, then you're going to be afraid. And if you have a very clear plan in your mind saying, okay, if I see this sign, then I will do this. And then I will go here. Or I can plan right now. This is the time to plan and to do. Like we did here. We knew about this 4 or 5 years ago. That's why we built this center here. This was just empty land. And we built this because it's high enough and we know that it's going to not be under the water. But flying over yesterday, Manila, my heart went like this. It's going to be disastrous. It's just going to be millions killed. And if you tell them this, they just laugh at you. So what can you do? You can just get the information out. As you're doing your plan, you have to be like Noah. Noah's Ark. And you have to tell people. And then you have to say, okay, if you laugh, fine. You think it's crazy, fine. But I'm just telling you this. Just let it plant the seed in your mind. Because otherwise, that's your job as a lecturer, is to inform of these crises. And then also to plan your survival somehow, how you're going to survive this. And then later on, it will be clearer as things get cleared out what you have to do to participate in the reconstruction of the society. Fair enough, isn't it? They give us enough time to do all this. At least it's not coming tomorrow.
So it means we have to need to save ourselves first. So
If you want to survive. If you don't care, just don't bother. Enjoy life. But if you're going to save yourself primarily because you're afraid of drowning,
that's the point.
that is the wrong reason. The real reason is that you have to survive because you have something to do after. And that's the rebuilding. And some of you feel that you have to survive for that reason, so that you can keep things going and help the hierarchy rebuild the Earth's surface.
So it's not about the first to survive, but it's all like to help the hierarchy.
That's right. Because that's why they put you here. Now, not only this bunch here, there's supposed to be hundreds of thousands of people like you, all around the world in different countries. But what are they doing now? So it didn't need a boot in the butt, just a big wave or something to wake them up. But I think I still have hope that once the things start to shake and the changes become quite obvious, they will wake up and they will realize what they really need to do. So you see the difference between just surviving or surviving to carry out the divine plan. That's the big difference.
And it was said before that when these things happen, that the living will end. That's how
Well, those who perish are taking the easy way out. Because, you just go off and go out to enjoy yourself and wait till all the problems are solved and then you come back and then you reincarnate. But those who survive are going to have big problems to resolve. A lot of things to resolve. And of course, as I mentioned to many audiences, is that after the floods, there are going to be pockets of survival. Whole cities are going to be still intact. Like you have Denver, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, and here we are at the Calgary. All those things are not going to be touched by the flood. And there's in the Himalayas, they've got this in Africa, they've got high plateaus. So on every continent, they have these high areas where there's already a civilization there that are going to survive. And that's another problem. We don't know how much of the old civilizations will carry on with the new civilization. But hopefully, the teachings are supposed to wash out all these old habits and the bad ways so we don't carry, so that these surviving civilizations don't carry all the nasty stuff into the new age. Now, what you see in the world happening, as the financial system is crumbling, you see plans now to create another system, and that's what they call the BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, these countries have banded together and they've started already to form different institutions. Now, I looked at that and I said, they're doing exactly the same thing as the other people did. The original, Bretton Woods, the one after World War II. They're setting up the same kind of institutions, they're setting up the same kind of assumptions when they're doing, and all it is, it's a way that these darker forces think they're going to survive the crisis. When the old thing falls, they'll replace it, but it's going to be the same old stuff. So don't be fooled by that. The solutions that are coming for the new society are going to come from the spiritual hierarchy. And do any of you know what's going to spark that off? It's what they call the externalization of the hierarchy. After these things are kind of cleared off, then you're going to see the masters appearing before you. And they will walk among us and guide us into how we are supposed to set up how we're supposed to set up the new society and the reconstruction. All of you are probably taking a mystery school. The mystery school is giving you little hints here and there what this new society is going to look like. I'll give you a hint. All of you have studied about the law of hierarchy, right? That's going to be the pattern of relationship. No longer going to be that everybody does what he wants to do. It's going to be a society based on the law of hierarchy. And the other thing that is exposed in the mystery school is the idea of gold. gold is going to be the standard. So you see all these little hints that the master scrappers day is giving us about these are the bricks and mortar of the beginning of the new civilization that's coming up. It's just not a whole bunch of religious or spiritual teaching. He constructed that mystery school to prepare all of you for what's coming. So you have the bricks, the little ideas and hints that are coming up, and this will form the basis for when the new religion comes and the world teacher comes. So you will be, those of you who learn this stuff will be immediately able to understand what the world teacher is talking about. And on the basis of that comes the new religion. And then, of course, during this time, you have the externalization of the hierarchy, which means that the hierarchy is going to drop down and start walking among us. You may not know who they are, but sometimes they'll let you know who they are. But you'll have these extraordinary beings in the thousands coming to help us understand and to help us build this stuff. Because if we don't have their help, what we're going to do is rebuild the same nasty civilization that's here before. This is the only way we can save the surface of the earth, save the earth, and infuse it with all the spiritual principles and laws that have to be built into the new society. And so you will be taught, you're all here, what to do and how to work as a group to build this whole new society. So they're not going to leave us out there twisting in the wind. This is all planned, all part of the divine plan.
So, for example, if these surviving instances, there are still some survivors of the old system, like, for example, political units, all economic people running the economy, still surviving in these different areas. And, well, they will try to, implement the system.
They will try, but wait, there's something else happening. It's not only the floods. Remember there's something called acceleration.
Yes.
You know what acceleration is? When the vibrations are speeding up, that we feel it, every day. Those will get rid of a lot of those that are left over. They just won't survive. They'll have heart problems and illnesses and eventually move on. So through acceleration and a higher vibration, they will clean out that sector also. The problem that remains is in our own minds. Each and every one of us has a bad side and a good side. And some of that bad side will carry over, and you gotta catch it. And also you see the 6 root race that are being born today, all these young kids who are so talented in many ways, but they're talented in many ways, but many wrong ways. There's no morality that goes with it, because they haven't been taught what is good and bad. You just think doing things. That's the job I think that's one of the major jobs of the light workers today. When they survive that, they have to re-educate a lot of the 6 root kids. They're only kids, then they're adults. And that'll be, and I don't know, I think they tend to be more open to re-education. So that's why, when I say that the good and bad are still residing in our own minds, we have to be careful. We have to be sure what the cosmic laws are that govern, what the principles of the ancient wisdom tell us, and work upon that basis. At least we have that to work with. And to work with what is given to you in the mission.
For sure, it will be made that most people
They're meant to do that. That's what they are. They are more clairvoyant and clairaudient. They can communicate between dimensions, which is what our society today suppresses. But when those abilities in our bodies that are able to do that, that's when you get that real communication between humanity and spiritual life. It's like, they're getting ideas that are flowing down, and that'll help a lot with the reconstruction. But what has to be taught to them, a lot of these 6-root race kids don't know anything about the ancient wisdom. That still is valid. It's going to be valid forever. But they have to learn the principles of the ancient wisdom so that they can carry on with these abilities. Without that, they're dangerous. And you see some of them have inside, they already know that something is different about them. And they don't know where to go. Because the society puts them into schools that suppress their spiritual abilities. And then what do? They start drinking, and they start taking drugs. And there's a whole generation that's quite wasted with these things. They just want to get away from this society. And the way they do it is by taking drugs. And I don't know yet what we have to do to save these people, or we just let them go and wait for the new generation to come through and educate them properly. Like Esther, you have 2 kids. They're just right for that kind of education. You've got to really watch what they
You mentioned about the clairaudience. Can you say something about clairaudient communication?
Well, this is why this whole thing is introduced in the mystery school, how to open up the clairaudience. But there are people, the kids today are born, many of them are born with the ability to hear. They hear people talking to them, they have their friends up in the etheric and astral zone, and they play with these friends, and they talk to them, and they discuss them. That's just natural for them. It's just, a clear audience means that you're no longer limited to the physical plane. You can hear these other planes. And that's where the danger comes, you see? Because when these kids are learning to only communicate with the next plane up into the etheric and the astral plane, then they're going to get all kinds of crap coming in their ears. That's why they have to learn the ancient wisdom. Because the ancient wisdom shows them that there are levels above the etheric and astral plane where the masters are sitting and the high initiates and disciples of the spiritual hierarchy are there. And they want to communicate with these guys on the bottom too. That's where the communication should go, not on these lower planes of the wisdom. So you've got to watch out. The true good information is coming from the masters and their initiates, not from the random blah 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 that you hear on the astral plane. Many people think that they hear these guides and everything coming through, and they tend to channel these people, and they're channeling all wrong information. And the information is meant to misguide you. So the thing is, if you're listening in clairaudience as well as clairvoyance, you gotta, when you go into meditation, you have to sort of dig a tunnel through this, and then you communicate through this tunnel into the upper planes, the mental planes, where the masters are residing, not on this plane, these 2 planes here. And the thing is, the reason why these 2 planes are relatively dangerous now is because the dark forces have taken over the astral plane, and they're telling these beings what to tell us and misinforming you, and they're also directing some of these astral beings to possess your body and take you over. So you better watch out for that too. Is that clear enough? Or did you want, did I answer your question?
Yes, I mean, just remember, because I mean, there's only five. It was discussed that it was five. So that's,
So what I'm saying is just because you have a clairvoyance and clairaudience doesn't mean you're more spiritual. That means that you gotta be more careful. And you're more in danger, more exposed to the bad elements. And to be able to be more careful, you have to be higher, you have to be more trained in the ageless wisdom. So that we can say, this guy is a black voice, and I want to listen to the truth. That's why you have to know how to decide right then. I'm not going to listen to you. I'll listen to this one.
But what is the distinction between the, if it is from the hierarchy or from whatever else is there?
Well, I mean, the hierarchy is what is, you know who Sanat Kumara is?
Yes.
The hierarchy is completely under the umbrella of Sanat Kumara. The other ones are not. They're just random. They don't respond to the rules, let's say, and the truth that's within the body of Sanat Kumara. In him, we live and move and have our being. That is this etheric body that covers the earth. And when you're in there, then you are naturally geared toward to the spiritual hierarchy, and to Shambhala, and to Sanat Kumara. If you're not in there, then a lot of these guys think, or these angels, or whatever people are driving at, and many of them present themselves as angels to people. They are telling them, well, I am a master, and they have no authority to do that. And the distinction that you can see, the big distinction between that kind of person and the beings that are within the spiritual hierarchy is love. You feel that these entities are trying to get you to do something, but you don't feel anything about love in there. And their motives are crazy. They want you to go here, go there, talk to people, do this. Whereas the other ones, those are the higher order, like the masters of the disciples, they never force you to do anything. They always suggest to you. And it's your own free will that takes over and says, okay, that sounds good, I'm going to do it. And you can feel from them this wave of love that comes when you communicate with them. That's the big difference. So that's the big difference between the Black Lodge and the White Lodge. White Lodge being the hierarchy, the Black Lodge being the people who have no longer connected with the hierarchy. Is that they can do everything that the White Lodge can except express the love.
So there is no force that they have to tell you. I mean, if there's a message from the, if it's from the hierarchy, it will not force you to do it.
Well, let's say it's usually when, if you get a message from the hierarchy, it's usually because you feel a need and you ask them, what is the answer to this? What am I? Those messages that are imposed on you all of a sudden you get these big messages. You gotta watch out for those. Because that's violating your free will too. You see the difference? When you ask and entreat and invoke, then the answers come. When you're just sitting there and somebody puts something in your mind, oh, it's not spiritual, it's nothing high. It means that somebody is invading and subjecting you to their will and violating your free will. You see the difference? And sometimes when you're sleeping, that's when you're in the weakest. You may be not in the astral plane, or is during the time also when you're just waking up, where your guard is down, where you're half asleep, half awake. That's when a lot of the dark force or the black lodge people come in and they inject you with these ideas that you don't know where they came from. So when you're shaving after that, you say, where did these ideas come from? Do they come from the high sources or do they come from low sources? Most people are so thrilled to get something from the wherever it is that they're willing to listen to this crap coming through. That's where you have to be very, very careful and say, look, who did it come from? Why are you telling me this thing? What is the reason? You have every right to ask what's going on. And if you don't get proper answers, then you just say, go away and don't bother me. Do you receive these things too? Does this happen? I can see you have. So watch out.
Yes.
Because it can really mislead you down the wrong path. Yes, Tina.
You have mentioned these three things that will happen.
The
The
what?
war, you have mentioned the war, financial crisis, and economic collapse. Economic collapse, air changes, and the war. Now they're spreading, now the diseases such as Ebola and other diseases spreading worldwide. But we take up this.
Oh, this is another scare.
Yeah.
You know, what happened to SARS? What happened to the swine flu? What happened to all these other chicken this and that? They're just trying to frighten you. You know where Liberia is? Tiny little country. West part of Africa. Now it's the media that's spreading the disease, not them. It's just another tactic to scare people. When I arrived at the airport yesterday, it looked like they were all geared up for Ebola. So we had to line up in front of the health inspector and fill in these yellow forms. I never had to do that before. And they were taking precautions. But that's just to show you, it's all part of the whole game they're playing, to scare you into thinking you're going to get the disease or some chicken this or pig this or... Remember the swine flu?
Yes.
Disappeared. And the SARS, what happened to that? Just disappeared. Eating AIDS, you're finding that they have had a cure for that all the time. And so it's no longer a big issue. It just kind of disappears. But I do have to warn you about taking any vaccination. These things are deadly because they have other things in it, not to prevent you from the diseases, it's to demobilize you. So watch out, just refuse it, don't take it.
There seems to be a confusion between Amon-Ra and Sanatana. Are they one or different?
Amon-Ra is the god that's in the sun. Sanat Kumara is in charge of the earth. Okay? And Sanat Kumara depends on his light from Amon-Ra. Same way we do. Same kind of sun thing. So that is Amon-Ra is Sanat Kumara's source of life too. Just like us. All the monads, each one of us is directly connected to Amon-Ra. Whereas we are not directly connected to Sanat Kumara. We are under his umbrella and we choose to work with him. We don't have to, but most of us want to work under Sanat Kumara because he has part of it. He is the implementer of the divine plan for the earth. Whereas Amon-Ra is oversees the divine planet for Neptune, the divine planet for Jupiter, for Mars, and all the other planets in our solar system. He's got a big job. But at the same time, all these beings that are in our solar system, on all the different planets, are all directly connected to him the real world, which is a big job.